This is a production of Cornell University.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for allowing us this time to get out the information about spotted lanternfly. We really appreciate it. Yeah, judging from what's happened in the last 3 years as we've been aggressively tracking the spotted lanternfly, I think this year is going to be a year that everybody's going to know about it. Areas that have never seen it before are going to be exposed to it. And we are just hoping that we can slow down the advance, keep an eye on it, and know exactly where it's going to prepare people, because it's showing up in areas. As we go through, you'll see some of the areas that we did not expect it, and it does show up. And once you see the map of where it is in New York State, you'll understand why I would say that. It's a little bit of history on it. As with emerald ash borer, Asian longhorn beetle, and a number of other invasive species that have hit the North American continent, this is native to Asia, China, Vietnam, that whole area. The part that is really frightening about spotted lanternfly, it feeds on over 70 species. We have seen in the nymph stage, they will feed on anything. Last year in Orangeburg, when we were there, when the nymphs were emerging and hopping around, they were actually feeding on poison ivy. So in that particular state, they will feed on any plant that's available to get them going. The other major concern for New York State: grapes, hops, and apples. This is something that obviously New York is very famous for: the wine industry, beer, apples. So this is another reason why our agency is getting so involved in this, along with a number of other agencies. You'll see a lot of reference to their preferred host is Ailanthus, the tree of heaven. It doesn't need it to complete its life cycle, but the tree of heaven is their desired host because there's something they're still researching in it. If it doesn't feed on the tree of heaven, the insect is not as robust. It doesn't last as long. It may not be able to survive in the cooler weather prior to its laying eggs. But tree of heaven is the major host that we have seen. Its life cycle starts as egg masses, and I'll show you some close-ups of egg masses later, because that's the important thing to look for at this time of year. They're late in the fall, and preferred host is tree of heaven, but you'll see when I show you some slides later, it will lay its eggs on any stationary object. If it's not moving, it'll lay an egg mass on you. In the New Jersey PPQ and state inspectors on the spotted lanternfly program, they actually said it, and I believe it wasn't a joke. If you stood still long enough in an infested area, the insect would land on you and lay eggs on you. I've seen them. They're not afraid to jump on people. The insects are harmless to humans, but it's something that we're going to have to be concerned with later on. Late April to early May, they hatch out first of 4 instars. They're black with the white spotting. 5th instars when they develop the red. They have the red spots and red with the white spots. And then as the adults, usually July is when you see the majority of the adults emerging. There's another, but gives you a little more details. Eggs are laid anywhere. June to October, straight to sort of June, they'll be hatching out. The first instar, second, third, they're all black. And at the early stages, they're confused for other insects. We were getting a lot of reports from where they were first very numerous in New York City and the Brooklyn area. People were sending in all sorts of insects thinking it was this, and it was not. But when they reach the 4th instar with the red markings, it becomes very distinctive. And at that point, as people start realizing, okay, we have a problem because this is spotted lanternfly. And you get the adults with the telltale red on their wings. They emerge July through December. The egg laying season is September through December. The research is still going on. I know they're researching a lot as it seems to be adapting to the colder weather. The USDA has a lab that one of their forestry scientists is now doing a study to see if they are adapting to the colder weather and are able to move further north than they are currently. Egg laying season, September to December. That also, we came across interesting situation last year. We had gone through an area in Orangeburg, cleared out all the egg masses that we could reach from the ground. We use pole scrapers. We can go up about 20 feet. Obviously, we cannot get to the tops of the trees. We cleared out, I think the second week of December, we cleared out everything that was at eye level or that we could reach. We went back in January, mid-January, just to do some checking, and we found more egg masses. So some of these adults, they may look like they're dead, but they're actually just sort of in the dormant stage in December. And if the weather warms up even for a day or two, they're still able to lay eggs in late December, possibly early January. So with the extended warm weather, this may become more of a problem, or as they adapt to the colder weather, it'll become more of a problem. Get a little background. The initial landing in the United States in North America was in Pennsylvania. If I remember, it was Berks County. Came in on some international shipment. Still not sure if it was stone, some type of cargo on a wood pallet. However, that is where it started. This is what the spread is currently. This is the updated map from New York State Integrated Pest Management at Cornell. They updated mid-February, and you can see from that one initial detection and infestation, it has now spread to quite a number of states. You see Pennsylvania is from east to west. There's a straight line across. Virtually the entire state of New Jersey is now infested. You can see here, Long Island, now we do have infestations. New York City, all the way out to Suffolk County on the east end. Massachusetts, sort of central Massachusetts. Southwestern Connecticut, bordering right up against the New York line, and then up the Hudson Valley. We got Westchester, Rockland, Orange, Ulster County in the Hudson Valley. Then we have Broome County, Antioga, Ithaca, and Binghamton in New York State. Here's the same thing in Ohio. This is just a continuation coming from Pennsylvania, but there was this one last year that was really concerning everybody in Indiana, and I don't remember the name of the town, but it was in Switzerland County in Indiana, right across Ohio, Kentucky. It was found in an RV lot, RV area where people just park, it's that. So we don't know where they don't know where it came from. They're still trying to trace, but obviously came from somewhere else. It was on an RV, which is one of our concerns. They're traveling from different states, passing through infested areas, carrying the insect, and you'll see again further on, hitchhiking is the major way this insect is spreading itself throughout the country. And you can see Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia. It is a problem for a lot of the states now in the Northeast, and it's spreading west and south. You see that the purple dots on some of these counties, these are areas where we have found adults, but we have not found a full infestation. So it has traveled throughout New York State, and we have found it, but we have not found any further infestations in these counties. Same thing here, Massachusetts, Connecticut. So we may find one or two in cargo freight package that was delivered to a box store, or we actually had a homeowner call us. They were camping in Pennsylvania. When they drove back to New York State, when they got out of their car, they saw a spotted lanternfly on their windshield. They were managed to kill it, but it did transport into one of the, in fact, I think that was one of these counties close to the Pennsylvania line. Okay, and you could also see the concern that we have, and you'll see in some of the other maps that I have. This is the New York State border between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So it's coming right across, expanding right into these areas. These areas in Pennsylvania, they've had some discoveries, but not a major infestation. It's a concern because, again, it's such a long border with Pennsylvania. It could be anywhere there and may come across at any time. Okay, these are the current large infestations, known infestations in New York State. Start in south in the downstate metropolitan area. All of New York City is considered infested. Staten Island, which is Richmond County, Brooklyn, which is Kings County, Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx. They are, in fact, we have found egg masses and adults, so full life cycle in all of those counties. Nassau County, and it's right along the Nassau-Suffolk County boundary, we have two major infestations. The scary part about this one is the northern truck route out into the farm country and the vineyards is 495, Interstate 495, Long Island Expressway. There's also a power line right of way right next to that. And to date, we have found over 7,000 egg masses on that one area. So this is going to be a problem this summer. We know that, and we're preparing for that. Further out, closer to the farm area, there's the infestation in the, Islip MacArthur Airport area in Bohemia, about 35 miles away from the vineyards. That's another area where our concern is it's getting to the farm country, getting to the vineyards. We're going to be spending a lot of time in that area. Moving further up in the Hudson Valley, right here is that same one where right at the New York, Connecticut state line. Here we have Orangeburg in Rockland County, Sloatsburg in Rockland County. The Sloatsburg one was on the thruway in the rest area. And if you ever pull into that area on 87 North, the thruway, all the trucks park along one side, along the tree line. Right along the tree line is where we found the infestation. So we know in this case it will move by interstate traffic, interstate trucking. You can see here, I-95, I-87, 287 goes across here, coming out of New Jersey, coming into New York, 84 coming out of Massachusetts, Connecticut, into New York, into Pennsylvania. It's following a lot of these major roadways. So we know that that's how it's being transferred and transported. The areas up here, this is in Newburgh. I have another slide that will show you the detail. It's another truck stop. Again, we know how it got to Newburgh. A little further up Highland in Ulster County, we have found adults, but so far no egg masses. We're still looking. It's an area of concern, but we're wondering where these egg masses are. If there are adults there, we know they're egg masses. We just haven't found them yet. Further down here is Port Jervis. Port Jervis is unique, and it's right at the intersection where New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania meet, and Interstate 84 goes right through. We found a number of infestations in Port Jervis going on now. This is going on over 2 years. So that is another area of concern. This is the most recent one we found, and one we have been working on a lot lately. We just had, for 2 weeks, we had about 12 to 15 inspectors going through the Binghamton area, checking on that infestation. And unfortunately, we have discovered and scraped about 4,000 egg masses so far, which if we scraped 4,000, if you listen to the researchers, they say we can only reach maybe 35% of the egg masses. That means there's quite a number of them that we can't reach or find that are still there. Hopefully we can get to them with a different sort of treatment. The concern again with Binghamton, it shows how the transport of the insect is happening. Route 81 going north and south right through Binghamton, interstate route. It also meets with 88, which goes northeast up to the Albany area, and you have 8617 feeding into Binghamton, also with meeting 81 and 88. Major transportation connection. There are truck stops there. We also found it in a truck stop in the Binghamton area. And then we had the Ithaca infestation, which we have managed to control it. And that's the word we're going to be using. We can manage it, we can control it. We have not eradicated it. We won't say that because it's almost impossible to say it's eradicated with confidence. You'll see a slide where we did do treatment in Ithaca, and we feel relatively confident that we've slowed it down. Whatever we found has been taken care of, and we're hoping we managed to catch it before it expanded. So again, as you can see, major transportation routes, that's what our concern is. One of the areas in Port Jervis too. I just wanted to mention there are two areas and they're both nature trails, Huckleberry Ridge State Forest. And we found adults and now we're finding egg masses at the trailheads. Staten Island was very similar. We figure it came over from New Jersey to nature trails. At the parking lots is where we found the insects. Ithaca, it was found right at the edge of Cornell's campus, and there was a student parking lot. I was standing in the parking lot and saw 16 different states represented by the cars that were parked there. That insect came from somewhere else. People don't know. It just, as you see later again, it can hide. The egg masses are difficult to find. Egg masses in adults can be transported without the person, the truck, the train. They don't know. And just again to show the major concern where ag and markets were concerned, the grapes, the apples, just the wine industry alone is we're really concerned about because of what it has done in Pennsylvania. So that's another reason we're getting all this information out and trying to make sure that we know where it is and happening. And unfortunately, as you can see, the wine areas on Long Island, we've found it about 30 miles away from that. It's a large area. The Hudson Valley, Poughkeepsie, right across from there is the Highland area where we found it on a nature trail. 84th is Newburgh. So that's another area we found it, and the concern is goes right up to Albany. And of course, Finger Lakes region, central to Western New York, the farms, the vineyards, orchards. This is an area of concern, which is why we're taking such a deep interest in that Binghamton infestation. We don't want it to spread further north and west. Okay, the concern is financial impact. We want to make sure the vineyards are ready for this, to have all the information that they need, any other farms, because then at the larval stage, they will feed on any type of plant at that point. New York State, financially, it would be a big hit if we lost even a portion of the vineyards for this industry. The visitors bring a lot of money. They stay over. Again, we love the tourism industry, the workers in the vineyards, the impact on that, the investors, the producers. So it is something of major concern. And again, as we said, the sad part is goes right up an interstate route, the Northway, the New York State Thruway, 90 going west, 81 going north-south, 390 coming out of the wine area. Some of these are some of the photos showing how it can happen. And these are not necessarily extreme instances in Pennsylvania, but these are what they try to educate people to show them what could happen. And we hope it doesn't get to this point in New York State. They swarm. You virtually can't see the bark of the tree because there's so many of them in the thousands. They do produce honeydew, and it produces that black, sticky, sweet substance, and it covers steps. It'll cover landscaping, trees. That will attract wasps, hornets, bees. So there's a secondary problem there. The other problem with the honeydew in areas such as vineyards and orchards, the honeydew gets all over the leaves and interferes with photosynthesis, weakening whichever tree or plant that it's on. So that is another concern, to keep them off the trees and keep them off their whatever plant they're feeding on. This is another, it's not really an extreme. There are a lot of homeowners in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. They're getting their shop vacs out to get the insects off the trees. It's a harmless way to the environment. They can do it, great. We actually have handheld vacuums that we go out when they're in the first through fourth and fifth instars. We use little handheld vacuums to pick up whatever we can find when they are on the smaller stage. When they're larger, we use a vacuum also, or we just use nets, whatever we can to kill them. Maybe one day we can get independently powered shop vacs to bring out with us, but this is not an exaggeration. This is what people are doing to control it in their landscape. You can see when they swarm feed, they cover the tree. Another example, how they swarm a business in Philadelphia, all around the business store. It's an extreme nuisance to people. Not harmful, but the nuisance factor is something that we try to keep in mind. And this was 2019 when it got into Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. The population really, I guess they weren't prepared for it. It snuck up on them. They were actually calling 911, reporting severe infestations to the police. The Philly Police Department, they had an interesting sense of humor, saying don't call them, but they would also like to welcome the new insect overlords. From what I've seen in some of the areas in Pennsylvania, it's almost as if they are taking over, but they're also subject to treatment and controls, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. The homeowners this past year, in 2021, are saying it wasn't as bad as last year. Whether they're not going back to the same areas or the steps that they are taking to control the population are working, we're not 100% sure, but we're hoping that keeps up. That means whatever we're doing is helping to reduce the population. Even though we may not eradicate it, we can keep it at controllable levels. This is the main host that they require to be strong and healthy. Like I said, they can survive and complete their life cycle without it, but the insect isn't as strong and as hardy. It may not survive long enough to produce eggs, or may not produce viable eggs, but the tree of heaven is required. It seems to be around every major infestation. And part of the reason for that is, if you're familiar with these trees, the ailanthus, it's a weed tree. It grows anywhere. In urban areas, you'll see it growing out of cracks in the sidewalk. I've seen them in New York City growing between buildings. There's a half a foot of space, and they'll grow straight up and over the roofs. Anywhere it can set down roots, it'll grow. And this is also one of those plants, one of those trees. You cut it at the ground level, it's going to start sending up sprouts, and it's going to come back. So it has to be killed with an herbicide or yanked out by its roots. Okay, this is why, as I was saying before, that they cluster. The reason is really unknown, but they swarm and they cluster and they feed at times. And this is in the vineyards in Pennsylvania, which is the example to show what can happen. You can see that the vineyard was completely wiped out by spotted lanternfly. Now, it's the vines. It's not that they directly kill the vines. It's as they feed on the vines and they're sucking the sap, the juices out of it, it weakens the vines, and the vines can't survive the winter. So it's not so much that they are killing the vines as they feed, it's that they're reducing the hardiness of the vines. And as this photo will show, and by springtime, they are so weak that they cannot survive. Again, the swarm feeding, they're constantly clustering. Insect feeds on the sap of the plant. It has the piercing sucking mouth part that you can see there. And the problem that creates the honeydew, as we were saying, it excretes the honeydew, which is virtually the sugars. The interesting thing about this insect, it doesn't really suck the sap out of the plant. It uses the tree's turgor, the interior pressure of the sap moving, to actually feed on it. So it's pulling a lot of the foam on it. It's looking for, from what I understand, the amino acids and nitrogen, and it expels any of the sugary sap as honeydew, sugar water, which is why it attracts bees, ants. It'll attract every other insect imaginable that can feed on a sweet substance. So before, though, the honeydew, it'll develop a sooty mold if it's left out there long enough without being cleaned off, and the sooty mold on its own then will eventually kill the plant, like the vines or any other fruit trees that it may be feeding on. Can be annoying. I mean, it could be annoying if you're standing under a group, a large amount of these insects feeding. You could actually see the honeydew raining down. There was a few areas, the one in Port Jervis, we were killing and trapping about 400 to 500 adults each day. And if you stood directly under the tree, the honeydew was actually falling on us. It was kind of disgusting. But it was we knew to expect it. The base of the tree was all black. The honeydew was just turning into the mold, and the ground was black and slippery. So for homeowners, if they're on the homeowner's property, just sitting in your backyard is going to be difficult if these are around. So homeowners that kind of push off the idea that they should be concerned, this is something we have to remind them of. It's going to be a severe nuisance for you if you like to sit out back. If you want to go to the park, you want to go on a trail. The city mold is going to make your property look ugly. It's going to attract other insects, bees and wasps. And if you have children, then you're going to be even more worried. So, okay, get back to what I continually talk about, how the insect moves. On its own, it can move 3 to 4 miles a year. How did it get from that? It's been here 2014. If you figure out 3 to 4 miles a year from that initial discovery in Pennsylvania, how did it get up to Massachusetts? They had a discovery in Vermont. How did it get out to Ohio? Again, it's the people moving it. We had the similar problem with the Asian longhorn beetle, although it was easier to control Asian longhorn beetle. Not that any of this stuff is easy, because it had only 12 host trees that it would survive on and live on. And it was transported with wood, firewood, the logging industry. We had more of an idea of where to look, how to control it. We would talk to the arborists, the tree care companies. They all knew what to look for. People, homeowners to an extent were advised of it, but it was easier to control, as I said, because we can limit anybody touching elm or maple. You can't move it out of New York City. You can't move it out of central Long Island. We had quarantines for ALB. Spotted lanternfly, we don't have specific. Nobody really moves ailanthus. It's a weed tree. I don't know of any landscaper or tree company that's ever received a request, hey, I want 5 ailanthus on my landscape. That's not going to happen. Unfortunately, because the spotted lanternfly is attracted to feeds on more than 70 different species, we got a problem. We have to control everything. We have a statewide quarantine of materials coming into the state. And what it means is everything should be inspected before it enters New York to make sure they're not moving spotted lanternfly at any life stage. That is difficult to control because there's so many ways to get in and out of New York State. We can't have inspectors at every road. We don't have enough inspectors on every road checking vehicles coming out of Pennsylvania, Ohio, or any other state into New York State. The same goes for the other states. They don't have enough inspectors. They cannot stop every vehicle coming out of New York State now that we have an infestation. So this is something that it's more of an outreach, more of education. Let the public, let the transportation industry know you need to be more aware of anytime you're moving any type of equipment and you're in an area where there may be spotted lanternfly. We reaching out to the trucking industry or anybody like Department of Transportation. You have construction equipment, you're using it in an area and you're leaving that area. Inspect your equipment before you leave. We're sure that's how a lot of this has moved. And I have photos later. You'd also lay egg masses anywhere. Doesn't have to be on trees. We found it on rock. We found it on metal signs. We found it underneath a piece of plywood that was lying on the ground probably for a year because it was starting to deteriorate. Found it in wheel wells of vehicles. So it could be anywhere. They seem to like rusty metal. Metal of any kind. It's flat, it's soft. They'll like it. Okay. What we have done, we've used different types of traps. Initially, these traps were all used for detection. I have a map that's coming. We'll show you. We placed them throughout New York State, and it was just, are there spotted lanternfly here? It was almost always used only as a detection method. Spotted lanternfly, when the egg masses hatch, the insects have a habit of climbing up the trees. Wherever they are, they climb up. They like to get to the height. They like to get to the top of the trees. So we've managed, the USDA and the states have managed to develop trapping methods. These are two. The top one is called a circle trap, where we have sort of a mesh that funnels the insects as they walk up the tree. It funnels them into an area. This photo doesn't have it, but attached to the top is either a jar or a plastic bag. The insects climb up inside the mesh and they get stuck in the bag or the bottle, and then we just collect it and dispose of it. You may have heard the sticky tape was being used. This was used a lot in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and we were using it for a while. And then we also realized that we had to do something. There was bycatch, and it was sad in a way. There were birds caught, squirrels caught on the sticky tape. So what we have been doing, putting a mesh wire around the sticky, so the insects can get up onto the tape, but hopefully this will prevent any birds or other animals from getting stuck on it. The mesh that we use in New York is a little tighter than this. I think even in this one, birds saw the insects, they were sticking their feet through and getting stuck. But we have stopped using uncovered sticky tape. Even though it worked, we don't use this method much anymore. And this is sort of the type of mesh that we use in New York. It's very fine, so nothing can get through it from the outside, but the insects can still crawl up. And as you can see, it does catch quite a bit. What we're using a lot of now in New York is this, called the bug barrier. It's manufactured by a specific company. The inside of this band is the sticky part. There's a foam underneath it that goes right up against the bark of the tree. And because it's foam, it seals up all the unevenness. So it's a barrier. As the insects are crawling up, they hit this foam. If they try to crawl back on the outside, they get stuck on the tape. We have had no bycatch using this type of bug barrier trap. It's worked very well. And we use this also quite a bit for monitoring. And eventually, let me see, next one. Eventually, we'll be using that for other purposes, for control of the population. Here's a closer photo of that. The circle trap, you can see how it's sort of a big funnel. As they climb up, they're going to be gradually funneled into this little area here, into a bag or jar, whichever we put on the top. These are the traps that we had deployed last year. I think we had approximately 250 traps out statewide last year. Okay, the orange dots are mostly us, New York State Ag and Markets, and the USDA PPQ. USDA is working very closely with us. We have partners in this control program. All these green dots were traps that were put up by stakeholders, other agencies working with us. DOT put up a number of traps. The prisms have been very helpful. They put up a lot of traps. New York State Parks has put up traps. I see. New York State, State DEC and New York City DEP around the reservoir areas, they're putting up traps. So we've had a lot of cooperation getting traps up throughout. These are what we used last year. And this was mostly used, again, for detection. This is how we found those infestations, Long Island and further upstate. This year, we're going to be doing trapping, not so much for detection. We're still going to use a number of traps for detection. This year, we plan to deploy over 500, close to 700, if we can manage it, 750 traps. And we are going to attempt to use it for population control. The USDA is doing a study in Pennsylvania. Our traps have caught a lot of insects. This the past summer of 2021. So we're hoping that if we can saturate an area where we expect a large population, say Binghamton area, Ithaca, also just in case something else pops up, I'm sorry, Ithaca, and moves further into the Finger Lakes, we're going to really concentrate on that area and the Long Island area, Suffolk County, the East End. With the USDA, we'll probably end up putting maybe 200 traps just around the Long Island area. Binghamton may end up being around the same number. But as I was saying, the USDA has been doing a study in Pennsylvania. They said the initial results look promising. They're testing to see if it can actually be reduce the population. They have found good results so far. What they are trying to do is work out how close to each other the traps should be or how far apart to still be successful in knocking the population down. You know, it may have to be one every 50 feet, one every 100 feet. Can it be one every 200 feet? That study is being performed in Pennsylvania. They did part of it late last summer. They're going to do it again this year. Hopefully it'll come out and show that this is a good method. What I can say is some of the traps that we had, to show you the ones in Port Jervis, we caught over 1,000 in one trap over the course of 2 months. So they will knock down any population, which at this point is a positive for us. And that's what we're attempting to do. Okay. Another concerning part about this insect, the earlier photos, you see the red wings. And I know if you see in my background, I have a print of one of the insects, and they always show the red as being very bright and vibrant. Unfortunately, when an adult has its wings folded and it's closed and it's sitting on the bark of a tree, it's very difficult to find, especially if you're looking maybe 10, 12 feet away. You can see there are 4 on the photo on the right. There are 4 adults on there. And if you could see, if you can see all of them, and that's the part that really was a test to us in learning how to identify this and find this. And as you can see, there's 4. And what we had when our first major infestation, other than in Staten Island, in the Orangeburg, New York area, which is in Rockland County, right on the New York-New Jersey border, we were new to this. Unfortunately, we were supposed to be training in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, so we would be more prepared for this. But then COVID hit, we couldn't travel interstate. Whatever we could learn, we had to learn from photos and slides. And I can tell you firsthand, you're not going to be able to identify it just from photos and slides. It takes a while to pick these out. There was a nature trail in Port Jervis, right next to a parking lot, so we understand how the insect initially got there. A number of us were looking at the same tree and it was clean. We didn't see anything. If you stayed there and watched for maybe 10 minutes, suddenly you would realize there was one at eye level straight in front of you, but you couldn't tell because it blended in so well with the tree bark. And that has happened more times than I would like to admit to a lot of us. So when we go out with at least 2 inspectors checking everything, have a backup set because the angle of the sunlight, the angle you're looking at it, you could look straight at it, not see it. You move half a foot to the right, and suddenly it's very visible. They're very difficult when they're on the trees if they're not swarming or clustering. The same thing for egg masses. This is something, we were not able to actually see egg masses firsthand because of the travel restrictions because of COVID. And there was one stretch in Orangeburg where, and I admit it, we walked past egg masses at least 5 or 6 times without seeing it. To us, the trees were clean. We didn't see anything. When we stopped, and if I remember, I think there was 6 of us, we all stood around one tree and we just stared at this tree for at least 10 minutes. And suddenly that one tree that we walked by 5 times, we found over 17 egg masses just at that one moment. So the adults and egg masses, they're difficult to see. You have to look carefully. Again, if it's cloudy, you got to look even more carefully. When we inspect for egg masses or adults, we actually carry flashlights with us for the daytime, to flash inside the canopy, because sometimes the slightest bit of shade, you could miss a lot. It's very difficult to identify these, even when you're trained. Even some of us now that we've been doing this 2 or 3 years and seeing them repeatedly, one inspector can find something that another inspector walked right by. So it's not even a matter, nobody gets pinpointed, why don't you know how to see it? This insect is very good at camouflaging itself. Okay, the egg masses, you can see they lay their egg masses, and there's usually 30 to 60, they don't have an exact number, 30 to 60 egg masses per egg mass, and you can see the rows are probably about 1 inch long. These are uncovered. Normally they are covered with a putty-like substance. It starts out white, gradually maybe a little pink, brown, and the color darkens, but it stays there if the putty mass covering stays there. Otherwise, we don't find a lot. The majority are covered. We do find quite a number, though, that are uncovered. And this is what overwinters. The adults will not survive the winter. The egg masses, to the best of our knowledge, they are surviving up to, let's say, like you can see, we've found them up the Hudson Valley, close to Albany, so maybe even New York State Thruway going east for us, Route 90, Interstate 90. It's warm enough below that the egg masses are surviving the winter. And we don't know, will they survive? It hasn't been here that long. It's still only 3 to 4 years in New York State. And there is that researcher in Connecticut for the Forest Service. She's actually studying how cold will it be before the egg masses will be killed. But she does believe that they're adapting to our cold and may move further north. And that's what's scary. What we also do is we go through infested areas and we scrape as many egg masses as we can. I mentioned earlier, we scraped over 7,000 egg masses in Long Island, approximately 4,000, 4,500 in the Binghamton area. People are mentioning, when you look at the research that says you can only reach 35% of them, the rest of them are up in the tree canopy, and with manual means, we're not going to see them or reach them. Why do we bother? If you just do a little bit of math from what I've told you, instead of saying 30 to 60, just take as an example, there are 40 viable eggs per 1 egg mass that survive the winter. If that hatches out, you're going to have, okay, 1 egg mass will produce 40 viable eggs. Suddenly they hatch out. If you get 100 of those egg masses, you can have 4,000 adults. And that's just from 100 egg masses, and using a conservative number of 40 eggs that survive. If half of those are female, 2,000 female, they lay 2,000 egg masses. The following year, we're now going to have 80,000 adults. If half of them are female, that means 40,000 egg masses for the following year, and then the adults are going to be over 1 million the year after that. So when anyone questions why are we scraping egg masses, it definitely will affect the total population. And if that's one of the ways we can do to control it, that's what we are doing. We're asking everybody to do. Social media sites, DEC has a very big presence. They're advertising a lot. They're posting a lot. New York State Ag and Markets is also posting. You see egg masses, scrape it, destroy it, kill it. Every one that you destroy prevents, as I said, at least maybe 100 adults next year, 40, anywhere 30 to 60 adults per egg mass. So you are helping the program. You are helping control it. Again, we're not using the word eradicate because we're not going to be able to get everyone. We control it. We'll be happy. And we also hope that this gives the researchers enough time to come up with a better control than we have now, some type of biological control, something unique to this insect, which I know they're working on. I don't have a lot of information on that, but they are working on different types of fungi that will affect that. Penn State and Cornell are doing a lot of research. They're supplying a lot of our information. As you can see, a lot of the information I'm showing has come from New York State IPM, Cornell. They've been an amazing help when it comes to giving us information and doing the research. So you're going to hear me constantly say, I appreciate everything they've done. The information they're giving us is priceless. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. They'll lay egg masses anywhere. If it's stationary, they'll lay an egg mass on a signpost. We found quite a few of them on signposts. You leave out some personal belongings or folding chairs and out in the backyard, suddenly the next day you're going to see egg masses, and it's not just one. As you can see, they're all over. A little more close up of the egg masses. This is what you're going to see, between 30 to 50. So that's why I use the average of 40. Here you can also see, if you're not looking at tree bark close enough, are you going to be able to tell that this is an egg mass? It takes a while to be able to be confident that what you're seeing is that. And how many people are going to look at a tree, see this, and know that it's spotted lanternfly? That comes to that part. We have to educate the public, everybody, landscapers, farmers, vineyard owners, get to know the signs of what an egg mass looks like over the winter time. And then eventually, once they become adults, it's easier as they're moving around. Easily transported. This is, personally, I feel this is how it got spread through New York State, and everywhere that we found it, it has a good explanation. You can see on a truck, egg masses where nobody would normally look. These were found. We had performed some truck stops as DOT would pull over semis, interstate traffic for safety inspections. They were kind enough to allow us to inspect for spotted lanternfly, and we were finding them on some of the trucks coming from other states or coming from an infested area. And we were finding this. And the driver could walk around his truck checking to see if the truck is safe. Is he going to see this? He's not looking for that. He doesn't know it. Those may hatch out in another state. There's another one. You can see an adult caught in the grill. You can see pieces here. What we have done also, the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, connected with the Lower Hudson Valley Prison, has conservation dogs. They have two dogs, Dia and Fagin, which are trained to sniff out all stages of spotted lanternfly. And if I remember correctly, it was a situation similar to this at one of our truck stops, where they found the remains of an adult in the grill of a truck. But we have used those conservation dogs, the sniffer dogs, to find egg masses and adults in areas where we didn't know it was, but we thought it had expanded. And the dogs were amazing. They found egg masses in an area that we had gone through that we were not aware were there. So that they play an important part in what we do. We use them. They are limited we're limited in the amount of time they can spend with us, but when we do use them, it's remarkable how good they are. I mean, you see the stories and hear the stories and see the examples about these sniffer dogs for all the types of insects, but it was just amazing watching them go to an area that we had inspected and pull up 2 or 3 more egg masses that we had not noticed. They were so well hidden, but the dogs knew where to go and where to find it. And fence posts, we not only do we use flashlights, we have mirrors that we can look under vehicles. We have to use them we first realized it in Orangeburg. There was a nature trail with a railing going over a pedestrian bridge. Underneath the bottom rail, like 2 or 3 inches above ground level, underneath, we found over 16 egg masses on one railing. So now we're going around with mirrors, checking under everything, behind fences if we can't physically get behind a fence. The egg masses are appearing everywhere. We use it, we have to look every guardrails. We have to look on both sides and underneath. We go along the highways, check for that. This was another case, trees that were overloaded with vines. We pulled away some of the vines and we found masses, quite a few egg masses underneath the vines. The adults got in there. It was a hidden area, protected. They laid their eggs. If we didn't pull away the vines, we would not have seen them. This is another reason why it's very difficult to see them all, because even pulling off all those vines on that one tree, how many of them could we get to? Or we couldn't get all the way up 40, 50 feet. If the vines went up that high, I'm sure there was some egg nests up there that we as ground inspectors couldn't get to. Another concern, these are photos. You can see the credits, one of our USDA partners just pulled away some loose bark and found underneath, hidden inside the crevice, their egg masses. We found quite a few of these in the Binghamton area on actually dead trees where the bark was kind of just inching away from the tree itself. And I'd say out of the 1,000 to few thousands that they caught, at least 100 or 200 were in areas similar to this, hidden behind bark of a tree, either dying or a wound in a tree or just some type of a crevice in the tree. This is the part where we know this is what's going to get by a lot of people. We have to, education, look very carefully, look everywhere for the egg masses. And what we do and what we advise the public or anybody working on spotted lanternfly to do, if you can't crush it, and if you scrape it off and it falls on the ground, stomp on it, crush it, make sure it is destroyed. The laboratories, the USDA lab has told us that we had asked them about, we use pole scrapers, and we were concerned when we scrape the egg mass off the tree, it may fall into an area we can't reach to step on. And we asked them, is there a possibility that they might survive not being attached to a tree or a surface? And the answer, unfortunately, was yes, there's a good possibility. If you scrape it off the tree and the egg masses, the eggs themselves aren't crushed, they may still hatch out wherever they landed. So what we try to do with the pole scrapers is crush it against the tree first and then scrape it, so that we feel a little more confident that there's no chance there's a viable egg still there. The lower ones, we'll scrape them off. You can use a card, like a credit card. We use our own scrapers. We scrape them into plastic bags or large mouth bottles that have some alcohol, or where we tell it, again, the public, we tell them you can use some hand sanitizer in a plastic bag if you don't have alcohol readily available. Scrape it in there, let them soak, the alcohol will kill them. This was the infestation we had in Ithaca. And this is the closest one we had prior to Binghamton to the Finger Lakes region. And we consider this, we have a good idea of what's going on and good control. It happened right at the edge of Cornell's campus, the university campus. And there was 2 woodlots, but in an area where there was, I guess, student housing. There were private apartments, some student housing. And we were very lucky in this area. The Ithaca Forestry Department, their chief forester was amazing. When she showed us, we showed her where this was, what was being done, what may have needed to be done. And the forestry department was extremely cooperative. They worked with us. We got permission from the property owners. So as you can see, we removed the Atlantis, removed some other host trees at the same time. I think in a way the property owners were kind of happy because we got rid of a weedy area and an overgrown area. So now it's easier for them to keep it cleaner and looking a little better, because it was quite overgrown, and it did have some really burrs, and the vegetation wasn't exactly pleasing. Okay, so after we did the clear cut of the 2 areas, we found no other signs. I think there was a report that they found one nymph somewhere, so there may be an egg mass missed, but we have found nothing since. So we are keeping a close eye on Ithaca and this one area, and it is kind of an isolated area, as you'll see on a map that I have coming up. But this was, we consider this one of the success stories where everybody, the public and the municipal agencies and the state agencies, we all work together and we're able to come up with a good solution to this that worked. The contractor that did the removals also came in and did a spraying after we did the clear cut of I think it was by Fenthrin, but that was just sort of a little bit more insurance that we caught everything. Unfortunately, it's not going to be that easy to get permission from everybody. Hey, we want to remove your bunch of your trees. It becomes expensive. Sometimes homeowners, landowners, they don't want the trees removed. So we have to come up with alternative types of treatment. But so far, we've had good luck on this, and I hope this continues in other areas. Yeah, the treatment, what we can do. The maps that are coming up, it will show you this. What we do is wherever there is a positive find, we know there's an infestation and it has the life cycle of the insect, you know, egg mass and adults. What we do is we do an intensive survey for 1/4 mile around it. Okay, we identify everything. And then what we do is we'll go out another 1/4 mile. So it'll be a total of a 1/2 mile from the positives. And in that second 1/4 mile, 1/2 mile buffer, if we find it clean, which is what happened in Ithaca, then we feel that, okay, there's a good chance we've isolated the infestation and we will treat within that 1/4 mile ring, because that's where it is. We went around an extra 1/4 mile and we didn't find anything. We've used that formula on other insects and it seems to have worked. So we're using it for this also. And as I said, Ithaca seems to have worked. We're currently putting that in the Binghamton area, and you'll see from the maps, every other area we're doing that. To treat all of the Atlantis are the ones that we will treat within that 1/4 mile ring will be treated. Dinotephuran is the pesticide of choice. Any Atlantis above 6-inch DBH will be used with Dinotephuran as a basal bark spray. So basically, you know, 6, 7 feet, 5 feet from the ground, you know, the root flare all the way up is sprayed. The insects feed on it, it becomes systemic. The insects feed on it, they drop, they die usually right there. Atlantis under 6 inches, like it to be removed. The problem with that, as I said before, if they just cut it at ground level, it's going to sprout, and the insect likes fresh new sprouts of Atlantis. I guess that's the term they use. It's like candy to them. You'll see them go after the Atlantis sprouts because it's fresh and it's new. Otherwise, they will use a hack and squirt, which just means they wound the tree at the base, they spray herbicide in it and kill it that way, which is, yeah, there's one way better than the other. Hack and squirt, we know it's not going to send up sprouts, or at least we hope it's not, but that's probably not going to happen. So removal or hack and squirt, get rid of the ones under 6 inch. That's all done within the 1/4 mile. In New York, what we've done, it's not just Ag and Markets working on this. There is no way one agency could handle this. And the director of Ag and Markets realized this initially right on and started this multi-agency approach, which is really working extremely well with us, to the point where some other states have asked for the model. How did you do this? And, you know, how does it work? Because they're trying to get in on this, because Ag and Markets alone cannot handle this. DEC alone could not handle this. DOT alone could not handle this, because it's so spread out over the state now and it could appear anywhere at any time. You can see from the slide on major cooperators, the USDA, PPQ, they're constantly by our side working with us. DEC, as you all know, they're very aware of any of the invasives, working very closely with us, working side by side. We're very lucky in that New York State DOT has taken an active role in this. They are setting out traps, they're monitoring their lands for it and working with us. New York State parks also they're working hand in hand with us. They're checking all their properties, setting out traps, monitoring it. And New York City DEP, because they have their reservoirs throughout the Hudson Valley, they have their people looking for us. They are setting traps and monitoring. New York City parks, New York City DOT, they have their own set of problems, but they are also part of this whole agency. So we all know what's going on. And as the second bullet point points out, we're using the same data collection, the technical words, platforms. We use Survey 123 and Workforce. So all our data comes in and we can put it on one map. USDA can see what we're doing. We can see what DEC is doing. DEC can see what DOT is doing. DOT can see what USDA is doing. We know by looking at all this, we're not stepping on each other's toes and we're getting better coverage. We know Ag and Markets, we know DOT has a residence in this area. We know we don't have to spend as much time there as we normally would. We know DOT is looking for us, looking for themselves. PPQ and us, they work with us, so they're taking a certain area, but we can look at the map. State is here, or DOT is here. Oh, DEP has traps in this area. We don't have to put more traps there. Let's move somewhere else. We are also using prisms. You've heard me mention very quickly before, the prisms have been an incredible help to us. They are getting the word out. Their people are looking, that they're gathering data. The Lower Hudson Valley put out traps. I think the Finger Lakes Prism also was putting out traps, putting out flyers, the social media reach. It's just been incredible how they're getting the word out and reporting what they find to us. Since most of the initial area was downstate, most of my experience has been with the Lower Hudson Valley Prism, but I've been making contact with the other prisons, and like I said, the cooperation we're getting for them is great. If you have to reach out to them, they have a lot of information available, and they're very helpful. The other thing that is good about the multi-agency approach, we may not have all the equipment we need, and it's coming up to the point where we're looking for treatment for some of the egg masses this year. Ag and Markets may not have. I know we don't have a lot of the equipment that we would need to do all the areas, but USDA does, or DOT does, DEC does. So we're pooling our equipment to do the treatment. So we don't have to go out and get all this equipment. DEC doesn't have to buy all the equipment. We're pooling the equipment. We know what we have. If we need mist sprayers or cannon sprayers, we can call PPQ or DEC, whoever happens to have it at that time. So this is something that, as I said, the director of our division initiated 2.5 years ago. And I don't think we would have been as successful even in just the monitoring stage if it wasn't for this. So all these state agencies and the prisms that have been cooperating with us have led to the point where we got all this information, and we're hoping that this will give us enough to slow the advance. Again, I'm not going to say we're going to eradicate it. Right now, we just have to slow it as much as we can and control the population, and hope the researchers catch up with some type of control that will hold it back. Citizen scientists, we're using IMAP invasives, asking the public, take these classes, report where you see Atlantis, report where you see any of the insects, and just let us know. We have access to this. So as the public reports it, we can look in IMAP invasives and see, okay, we got a positive report here. Let's send somebody out to verify, is it true? And then we can do what we have to do as far as control treatment of any sort. Again, I mentioned prisms. I can't say enough about the prisms. They've been so helpful to us. Without them, I said we wouldn't be as far as we have, along with the multi-agency approach. So what we have used the prisms for is, they're another set of eyes and ears. You saw vast areas where there were no traps on that map. They're able to check that and help us and say, okay, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to go here. We just checked this whole woodlot. We checked this park. We just checked the city. So that's something that we did not have the personnel to do. So it is a great help. And I keep saying that, but I can't say enough for that. Extensive ground surveys. I said we just spent 2 weeks in the Binghamton area at 12 inspectors, 12 to 15 inspectors. We were able to see from the ground up. Unfortunately, there was snow and ice cover on the ground, so we weren't able to see everything that was on the ground. The root flares, there was any type of if we were in private properties, backyard properties, toys and landscaping were covered with snow and ice. So where we could expect egg masses, we weren't able to see 100%, but we were able to see what was on the trees. And that's the scary part in Binghamton. Most of the egg masses we found were visible on the trees because the ground had snow cover. And if we found 4,000 at eye level, we know we got to go back. So once the snow cover and the ice cover is gone, we're going to have to go back and go over some of these properties and see what we weren't able to see down below. Secure treatment releases, we're going to go through again and ask the homeowners and the property owners, public or private, would you be willing to allow us or DEC or PPQ come in and do some type of treatment? Whether it's with the dinotefuran, Atlantis removal, Atlantis hack and squirt, or there's another one I didn't mention and it's not listed here, the golden pest oil spray, which is used on egg masses, and they're talking about that a lot. So we are thinking of doing that. We are preparing to do that. It depends on, we're a government agency. It depends a lot on our funding, but we are working on that now, deciding if we have the funding to do it, can we do it, where are we going to do it, and we're preparing to actually perform this treatment with the spray oils for the egg masses. We need to secure releases, permissions from the property owners. So when we go back to finish our inspections, we're going to be asking them to sign a release saying, we can treat your property, explaining to them what it is, giving them more information, and hopefully we get enough cooperation from property owners that we can actually do the treatment. Our concern is, we stay in contact a lot with our New Jersey counterparts. One or two of the problems they've had is you can go an entire, and I'll use the term block because it's in the residential areas, you can get, out of 25 houses on the block, you can get permission to treat 21. Where everybody's concerned, well, if there are egg masses on those other 4 that didn't sign, wow, is it even worth it? As I mentioned before, every egg mass that we scrape off is potentially preventing 40 adults. So, okay, we have to live with it. We're still knocking back the population by at least a half to 75%. We consider that a victory. So we're hoping that we get cooperation from the public on this. And like I said, that'll be coming up within the next month or so, once we get back, once the snow cover is gone. Again, this is virtually just repeating the multi-agency approach, the traps. I mentioned the new method of using traps this year. We plan on doing it as population control, not just detection. It will be a combination of both detection and control, population control. The management plan is based on, they have this matrix of how they decide which areas to go through, the financial impact, the people impact, the impact on the crops itself. So that'll tell us where we're going to put our intensive efforts. Yeah, I mentioned before, right now it looks like the Hudson Valley, the east end of Long Island, the vineyards and the farmland out there, and Finger Lakes region, western New York. Yeah, vineyards, farms, orchards, that's our concern. So that's what Agri Markets is going to be focusing on. And we use our little decision matrix to say, okay, where do we start? When do we start? How much effort do we do here versus here? We are not saying that we're giving up on homeowners or other areas, but we have to protect the crops. Agri Markets, that's our mission. We're using the outreach to get the people to understand what they can do on their own. And like I said, the next, let's see, well, we're not up at that page yet. Just to give you an idea, again, I was talking about the quarter mile, half mile. The pink shaded areas are the quarter mile circles. The yellow is the half mile. This is Binghamton. Now you can see if it's half mile from the center of an infestation to the outer rim of the second buffer zone. So when you look at this whole area, we have almost 4 miles that we're trying to inspect. And you can just imagine, this is a residential area on the left here, a lot of houses, a lot of properties. In 2 weeks, it took us a lot just to get through maybe half of it. It's a big job. But the other thing to notice is this road coming in from the right is 8617. This road coming from the south is 81. So 81 and 17, major highway. 17 is also Interstate 86. Right through Binghamton, and then 86 continues west, 81 continues north. The other point of concern is, if you look closely enough on this map, this is a railroad line. Norfolk and Southern is going right through here, and there's got to be at least 30 sidings here. Every time we've been up there, there had to be hundreds of freight cars just sitting, waiting to be moved. Where did it come from? Did it come from an infested area in Pennsylvania, Virginia? Is it being infested? Are the cars parked there now being infested by the current infestation we have in Binghamton? And those freight cars will now transfer it further west in New York, potentially into another state. So that's, again, this is a concern, why we're concerned with the Binghamton area. This is Ithaca. I was saying before, Ithaca, we only had that one infested area. We were able to go through that whole quarter-mile area. Nothing else has been found. Nothing is found in the half-mile area. We're monitoring it. They were talking about possibly doing a treatment just as a second treatment this year. We haven't found egg masses, so it may not be an egg mass treatment. We may do a dinoteffuran spray later on in the spring, and hopefully we don't see any hatch out. But that is something we're watching closely. This is an area where we feel our efforts did come up with a positive resolution. We're not going to say it was eradicated, but it seems like we've halted the spread of it further into the Finger Lakes area. So we're considering this a good example of what we want to do. This is the Port Jervis area, and I just want to use this to show you one of the incidents that's happening that's confusing a lot of people. This is Route 84 that comes out of Massachusetts, Connecticut, across New York State, right into Pennsylvania. And what I was mentioning earlier, the area of concern, this is where New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York State all meet. And it's really no surprise that that's where we're finding the infestation. The interesting part about this that's confusing us, in this area here, in 2020, we found one egg mass. 2021, we killed well over 2,000 adults in that same area where we found the egg mass. And we don't, where did these adults come from? We did a thorough search. We only found one egg mass. Gives you the idea of how difficult it is to control this insect. Where did all those other egg masses, where were they hiding? So, we had 4 inspectors there for weeks trying to look under everything. Suddenly all the adults showed up. The strange part is the opposite happened further down in the city area in one of their parks. We had found a lot of egg masses. We scraped them, what we could find, but we knew there was still some there. And there were very few adults, not as many as we would have expected from the egg masses we scraped. So there are still things the researchers are studying, the scientists are studying, we don't know the answer to, but we're hoping we're knocking down the population. Hopefully they'll come up with a result. These areas here along Route 6, 84, this is some of those areas where I was saying there are nature trails at each one of these finds. And each time we found either an adult or an egg mass was in the parking area, the trailhead. So it moved there by people, cars, any type of vehicle they use to get to that area. We think DEC is clearing that area and checking that area. We think we may have controlled it because further in, you don't find that many Atlantis in a forest. You usually find that at the edges, at disturbed areas, which is why you see them in parking lots, around railroads, around highways. But that's another area of interest that we're going to be working on.
Frank, it's 3 o'clock, so we are going to need to start wrapping up. Okay.
Okay. Again, Newburgh are concerned. These are the infested areas. Show you a little Long Island. This is the area where we're concerned. 30 miles further east are the farms and the vineyards. We're going to, the USDA and New York State, this is where we're going to make a stand with treatment and trapping. Yeah, the lower Hudson Valley, you can see these are all the fines. So our concern is there. And this, if you need any information, the Integrated Pest Management, Cornell's IPM website is fantastic. Anything you need is here. You want general information, it's here. Insecticides. You need your homeowner or business, you got homeowner commercial use, the list is here of anything that's usable, acceptable, that'll work. Just go to this website and you'll find anything you need. See insecticides for use on spotted lanternfly, fact sheets, tons of information. Then if you're in a quarantine zone, you're leaving, you're driving through, check your vehicle, check anything. We ourselves, if inspectors, as we were leaving Binghamton, we checked everything on our cars. We checked the wheel wells, we checked under the hood, making sure we weren't transporting anything out. Although this time of year, we know egg masses weren't being laid. We were just being extra careful. We do that during the flying season when they are laying eggs. Every vehicle is checked before it leaves an area that we're working in. We ask anybody to report it. On the IPM website, there's a way to report it. There's an email address for New York State, which is spottedlanternfly@agriculture.ny.gov. You can report it there. Every report is going to be looked at. And that the timing is good. I actually got to the end. Yeah, I keep saying that Cornell, New York State IPM, Brian Eschenau of IPM for a lot of this information. Thank you. Thank them for all this data, all the help that they've been providing us. You can't put a price on it. It's been invaluable information to help us through this, help us with the outreach to the public. And here's our time. If you have any questions, I guess I can try to answer them. And just if anybody wants, here's my contact information, and Ethan Angel, who's the field manager for the entire state, his contact information. Feel free to call me, email me, request any type of information. If I can help you out with information or any type of outreach material, we'd be more than happy to. Any more people involved in this, we appreciate that. So if there are any questions that
Any questions for Frank, you could either ask or you could put it over in the chat.
let me see.
I put the IPM websites that Frank had mentioned, they're in the chat as well, if you'd like to go there.
Okay, I guess
So I don't see anything in chat. Kim, if you want to put the well, you already did. You put out the checkout link for the DEC credits. Frank, I really want to thank you. This was an excellent presentation and one of the scariest presentations I think I've heard in my career.
Yeah, it could be, and I guess the whole point is we want to get the public aware of what's coming. As I said, it encroached on New York State faster than we had expected, so we want to warn everybody. But again, I thank you for this opportunity to get the word out to more people, especially up in the western area of New York, which we haven't had that big a presence until recently. So again, thank you very much for allowing us this time.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.